guys, welcome back to Breakfast by the Bay. My name's Jeannine, and of course we have Mr. Jeff behind the camera. So if you guys have any questions or comments, make sure to write them down and he'll give you guys a big shout out and he'll help me answer those questions. Like always, please give me a big thumbs up or okay if you can hear me, if you can see me, so Mr. Jeff knows he's doing a great job behind the camera. And if we have any students out there that are representing their school, make sure you guys write those down so we can give you a shout out as well. And today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking all about shellfishing in Rhode Island. And we're going to give you guys some tools and tricks to get you guys out onto the bay so you can go out and you can collect some shellfish of your own and maybe bring back a taste of the bay to your friends and family. So we're really excited you guys are here with us today. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about shellfishing in Rhode Island. You're from Rhode Island, shellfishing is a big part of who we are. Now, when people talk about shellfishing, it's like people like you and me going out onto Narragansett Bay, searching for, collecting, and even harvesting shellfish to take home and to eat and to share with their friends and family. So it's a big part about being a Rhode Islander, and a lot of Rhode Islanders actually go out and recreationally shellfish, and you can do this all year long. If you're a Rhode Island resident, shellfishing is like your Rhode Island right. It's free to all Rhode Islanders. In Rhode Island, we have over 600 commercial shellfishermen who go out every day, and this is their job. They go out all year long to go out and collect shellfish right from Narragansett Bay. In Rhode Island, our commercial shellfishermen bring over $6 million into our economy, and shellfish caught in Rhode Island are sold in every state in the United States, which is pretty crazy. So even though we might have the smallest state, our shellfishing industry has a huge impact on our entire nation, which is really cool. Now, when we're talking about shellfishing, this can be a really broad term. When people talk about shellfishing, they might think of mollusks, echinoderms, or even crustaceans. For you, Save the Bears and Breakfast by the Bears know, when we're talking about animals like that, we're talking about sea stars, sea urchins, crabs, clams, and snails. But when we're talking about shellfishing today, we're going to be talking about our mollusks. We're going to be talking about our hard-shelled animals that live in a shell, like our clams. So when we're talking about shellfishing today, we're going to be talking about things like our quahogs, our oysters, we're talking about scallops, mussels, and even our snails. So shellfishing and shellfish themselves are really important to us in Rhode Island. Shellfish actually do a lot for us here in Rhode Island. Of course, they're a really great source of food. They can be a habitat for other animals. But just by having shellfish in our bay, they're helping clean our bay. They're helping improve our water quality. So shellfish are all filter feeders. So they're sucking in water, and they're sucking in water to get in oxygen and get in food for themselves. But while they're sucking in that water to get all that food and oxygen, they're also removing any pollutants, bacteria, or toxins that are in the water that can harm us. So our shellfish, like our oysters, these guys can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. And our quahogs can filter up to about 25 gallons of water a day. Again, just by having them in our bay, they're helping clean the water for us, which is awesome. Now, another great thing that shellfish do for us here in Rhode Island are shellfish like our mussels and our oysters. These guys are what we would call shoreline stabilizers. So our mussels and our oysters, they like to be found, or you can find them, along the shoreline and like to attach themselves to hard surfaces. So our mussels, we can find these guys attached to plants and salt marshes. We can find them attached to rocks and shells along the rocky shore. And our oysters, they can create their own reefs just by attaching themselves to other oyster shells, other hard shells, or they can also be found along the rocky shore. And these guys are really great shoreline stabilizers. When we have giant storms, we have big waves crashing down along our coastline, instead of our shoreline being eroded, it's going to be these shellfish that take their impact and help reduce erosion in our bay. Now, shellfish in Rhode Island are also really important to us in Rhode Island. They're important to our history, our culture, family traditions, and our economy. Now, shellfish have been eaten for thousands of years all around the world. But we can even date back to shellfish being important to us here in Rhode Island as well. All the way back in the 1700s, the Narragansett Indians were first eating shellfish as food, and they were relying on a lot of the oysters for food. Shellfishing and these resources are so important. It was all the way back in the 1700s were the first regulations to protect these important resources and prevent overfishing here in Rhode Island, which is pretty crazy that the first regulations were in the 1700s. Now, in the 1800s, shellfishing, the industry was still a big economic driver in Rhode Island, mostly relying on oysters and scallops to be that big economic driver throughout the entire 1800s. And it wasn't until the 1900s that the Industrial Revolution and population growth in Rhode Island started to impact our water quality. The pollution that was happening on land started to come into Narragansett Bay, and it really started to hurt our oyster industry. Now, while that was happening, this started to reduce our oyster population in our bay. There was a giant storm that maybe some of you guys might have heard of. The hurricane of 1938, which if you're from Rhode Island, you've heard tons of stories about the hurricane of 1938, and also really hurt our oyster industry. As that hurricane came all the way up the bay, it almost wiped out all of the oyster industry. It took out their shucking houses, it took out their boats, their wharves, and their marinas. And while the oyster industry was trying to recover and was trying to get back on its feet, World War II called a lot of our shellfishermen and a lot of people from Rhode Island off to war, and they weren't really able to help that oyster industry come back to life. But luckily, when people returned to war and they were looking for jobs, what they found is the shellfishing industry had been stabilized, and it was all thanks to our quahog right here. The quahog had taken the place of the oyster, and it had helped rebuild our shellfishing industry, and it became so popular. It became our state shellfish in 1987. So today, we are going to talk a lot about quahogs, and we're going to talk a lot about quahogging, getting out onto the bay and trying to collect some of these quahogs and bring a taste of the bay back to you, your friends, and your family at home. So a lot of you guys have probably seen our quahog before. Maybe if you're a Breakfast by the Bear, you have met our quahog that we call Clammy. Maybe you have gone out into Narragansett Bay and you've seen some of these guys along the shoreline. Maybe you've gone quahogging already and you found one of these shells already. So this right here is our quahog. It's a bivalve. It's a hard shell bivalve, meaning it has two shells. And those two shells are connected at the hinge. So if we look right here, the hinge is going to be the oldest part of our quahog, the oldest part of our shellfish. And this is where the quahog grows from. Now, if you want to know how old your quahog is, it's really easy. You're going to count the rings just like you would count the rings on a tree. Now, what you might notice if you find a quahog on the beach, you might find that some rings are darker than others. Those dark rings are going to represent like wintertime when food was less abundant for our quahog or our shellfish to grow and to eat. You also might notice that the first few rings are a lot bigger. So our quahogs grow more rapidly when they're younger, and as they get older, they grow a little bit slower. If you look at this quahog, it's kind of opposite, but this one is just a model. Now, quahogs in our bay can be anywhere from 12 to 20 years old, and if they're really good at hiding from predators like snails or fish or seagulls or sea stars or even us or a quahogger like you, if they're really good at avoiding those predators, they can live all the way up to be 40 years old. The oldest quahog has been over 100 years old, and the oldest ocean quahog has been over 500 years old, which is pretty crazy. Now, when we're talking about quahogging, we want our quahog to be at least 1 inch. That's the legal size to take quahogs out of the water and bring them home to eat with your friends and family. And it takes a quahog anywhere from like 4 to 7 years to get that 1 inch size where you can legally take it home and eat it. Now, we want to make sure we give our quahogs time to get to that 1 inch because in that time, it gives them a chance to reproduce. And when our quahogs spawn or when they reproduce, they can put 1 to 5 million eggs out into the bay, which is really important. So when we take our quahogs away, we know that they're restocking the bay to make sure that they can always come back and collect more shellfish. When they put out those eggs, it's also really important. It becomes part of the food chain. It becomes food for other animals and living in our bay, helping our bay grow more and more, which is awesome. Now, you are out looking for a quahog like this. You are probably going to want to be, or you will want to be looking in the muddy bottom. So these guys have this big muscular foot, so we know that they can move. And they have this big muscular foot to dig themselves into the sand. So when you're out quahogging, you're going to want to be digging in the sand looking for a quahog that has buried himself with his muscular foot. Another thing about our quahog that you probably already know, these guys are filter feeders. So they're using their siphons to suck in water to get food and to get oxygen. But also, we know that as they're filtering that water, they're also removing any pollutants or bacteria or toxins that are in the water that can harm us. Now, this is really important because this makes quahogs and other filter feeders really great indicator species. So our quahogs are really great indicator species if we go out and we test them and we're finding that there's pollutants or toxins in the quahogs, giving us a really good idea that that area that they're living in could be polluted or could have toxins that could harm us. And they're really great indicator species because they spend their entire life in the water, and they, even though they have this muscular foot, they're not moving too far. So if we're testing our quahogs, it's giving us a really good idea what the water quality in that area is. Awesome. So now that you guys know a lot about shellfishing in Rhode Island, you know a bunch about our quahogs, we are going to give you guys some tips and tricks and rules to get you guys out onto the water and go shellfishing, go quahogging yourself. So the first thing you need if you want to go quahogging is you need a shellfishing license. So I already said, if you guys are a Rhode Island resident, recreational shellfishing is free to you. All year round, you can go out and go shellfishing. So what you need to bring with you if you're ready to go quahogging, you need to bring your Rhode Island license or your ID to prove that you are that Rhode Island resident. Now, if you're not a resident, that is totally okay. You can still get on the water. You can go shellfishing, you can go quahogging like a true Rhode Islander. What you need to do is you need to go onto DEM's website. So you can get a permit or you can get a shellfishing license for the whole year. Or if you just want to try it out, you can get a tourist license where it's just for about 2 weeks where you can go out and you have a shellfishing license to go out and try and collect some of the taste of the bay that we have growing here in Narragansett Bay. So once you have your license, you need to know the rules and the regulations. So when I talk about rules and regulations, you need to know like the season that you can go out, you can go shellfishing, the size of the shellfish that you can collect and take out, what's the legal size that you can grab, and then how many shellfish can you actually take with you. So when we're talking about quahogs, it's really easy. Their shellfishing season is open all year long, which is awesome. But if you want to go quahog, or if you want to go shellfishing for things like oysters or scallops, you're going to want to go to DEM's website. And we have that link right here in our video down below. So check out that link and you can find the seasons for all the shellfish in our bay. But for quahogs, super easy. It's open all year long. Now, the legal size, we already talked about that. For our shellfish, you want to make sure, or for our quahog, the legal size is 1 inch at the hinge. And the best way to tell is you're going to want a gauge. So you're going to want a measuring gauge where you can actually put the shellfish right through it. And if it falls all the way through, it's not big enough. You're going to want to put it back into the bag. But if that 1 inch stops at the gauge, that tells you that our quahog is a legal size and you can take it home with you. Now when people talk about sizes of quahogs, you've probably heard a bunch of different names for them. You might have heard of little necks or top necks or cherry stones or chowders. And even though we have all these different names, these guys are still quahogs. So these right here are little necks. The little necks are probably the most valuable ones that our commercial shell fishermen are looking for. Probably what you've eaten before. These are right when they get legal size. So like 1 to 2 inches are our little necks. Then they get bigger to our top necks, then our cherry stones, and then these are called our chowders. So our chowders are about 3 inches or bigger. And they're often called a chowder because as they get bigger, their body gets a little bit tougher. So they're going to need to be put into a chowder so you can really enjoy them. Or my favorite, put them in a clam cake. So now that you know the sizes, how much can you take with you? Well, if you're a Rhode Island resident, you can take up to half a bushel, which is about 4 gallons of quahogs. Now, if you are have a shellfishing license, you're out of state recreational shellfisherman, you can take about a peck of quahogs. Now these are odd measurements you might not have heard before, but a peck is about 2 gallons of quahogs, which might be a measurement you've heard before. Now, it can be difficult to know how much 2 gallons or 4 gallons of shellfishing are, or how much of quahogs are. So the best thing to do, and it's not like when you're shellfishing, you're just going to be holding them in your hand and putting them in your pocket. You have a lot of work to do. So you're going to need a basket for them. So if you look over here, you can actually go out and you can get quahogging baskets that are already at size. So you don't have to guess the legal amount. These guys are already the amount that you can take. So this right here is a bushel. So if you're a Rhode Island resident, you can take about half of this basket legally every day. And if you're not a resident, this is about a peck, or like I said, 2 gallons of quahogs that you can take legally every day. Now, I always say the best amount of quahogs to take is however much you, your friends, and your family, up to legal amount, are going to consume in the next 24 hours, or if you're going to refrigerate them properly, up to about a week. So you guys know quahogging season is open all year round. So just grab the amount that you and your friends and family are going to enjoy in the next couple of days, or a couple of 24 hours. Or if you need more, you can always come back into the bay and grab more quahogs, because the season is open all year round. So now that we know what you need, we know that you have a license, you know the rules, where are you going to go quahogging? Well, because these guys are filter feeders, and as they're sucking in that water and that oxygen, they're also sucking in any pollutants or bacteria that's in the water. So you want to make sure that you are quahogging in areas that are approved by DEM. And DEM approves their harvesting areas all around the bay by going out and routinely and frequently checking water quality all around the bay. And when they're checking this water quality, they're classifying different areas around the bay as approved, conditional, and prohibited. And you can go right onto their website and check it out. And if you look, you can see this is the chart that they have right on their bay that's clearly showing you what areas are approved. All these green areas are approved. So if you want to go shellfishing in our bay, these green areas are always open. The only time that they will be closed is due to a major storm event, an oil spill, or maybe if there's red tide. So if you're not sure if anything is happening around our bay, you always want to check DEM's website. Now the next area is these yellow areas. These yellow areas are conditional. These areas are most likely to close and are most frequently going to close due to any amount of rainfall or anything else happening in our bay. So before you go out, again, the first thing you need to do is check with DEM to make sure that these areas are safe for you to go out and collect and harvest to eat these shellfish. Now the last areas are these red areas. These are prohibited areas. And these areas will always be closed. And just because these areas are closed, these areas are usually marinas, harbors, or coves. And just because they're closed does not necessarily mean these areas are polluted. Often, a lot of these areas are growing sanctuaries or spawning sanctuaries where DEM will allow our quahogs to grow and reproduce. And if they're ever needed, they can be used to restock our approved areas or our wild brood stock in Rhode Island for our commercial and our recreational shell fishermen. So the first thing you need to do before you go out and before you determine what site you're going to go, check with DEM. And the best way to check is you can go right onto their website. And it's the first thing you can see. It'll show you all the closure alerts. And again, that link is right in this video, right below. Also, you can call them. They have a 24/7 shellfishing hotline that we have right here, and it's right on their website as well. So you can always call. It'll tell you what closures are happening that day. Or you can even sign up for their email notifications, where whenever there's a closure on the bay, they'll send you an email. But now that you know all the rules and regulations, what you need to do to get out onto the bay, let's get you out there. So when you're going out onto the bay to go quahogging, the first thing you want to do is you need to go between sunrise and sunset. Those are the times that it's allowed to go quahogging or shellfishing in Rhode Island. So between sunrise and sunset, and then you're going to want to go at low tide. An hour or 2 hours before low tide, go out with the tide and then come back with it. Give yourself plenty of time to collect all those quahogs for you, your friends, and your family. And once you're ready, let's talk about some of the tools you're going to need when you're out here. So I have a few good quahoggers that are out here already, and what you might notice is some things that we've already talked about. They have their gauge to measure. Every time they catch a quahog, they want to make sure their quahog does not slip through that gauge. If it does, it's not ready, it's not legal size. You want to send it back into the water and come back for it in a few years. They also have their baskets. A lot of times what you'll notice is people will put floaties on their baskets. You're already doing so much hard work collecting those quahogs. You don't have to do all the hard work of keeping your basket afloat and holding onto it as well. Use those floaties, and they're just tied on. Those usually just pool noodles that people use. And then what you're probably noticing is, how are you going to catch those quahogs? You're going to use a quahogging rake. And I have a quahogging rake right here to show you guys. So this right here is my quahogging rake, and as you look at it, it's really not that big. So we have these tines. These tines are what you're going to put face down into the water, and you're just going to act as if you're raking leaves. What you might notice is these tines aren't that long. The quahogs usually don't go that deep. So if you're in that mud, you only have to dig about 1 or 2 inches down. And just like you're raking, you're going to flip your quahogging rake down. You're going to rake through the mud. Remember, you don't have to go that deep, but you do want to be in a muddy area. So if you just get to the beach and the tide's there and you're standing in the sand, keep walking out a little bit further. You want to be in a sandy, muddy bottom. You want the quahogs to be living more in a muddy area. You're just going to rake through, and then hopefully you're going to hear a little ding, or you'll feel it. And once you feel it, you're going to flip your rake over, your quahogging rake, and then let the water do all the hard work for you. Shake out your rake, get all that mud out of there, and hopefully what will happen is you'll be able to pull out a quahog. And remember, once you pull out that quahog, the first thing you need to do, measure in that gauge. You want to measure at the hinge, at the oldest part of your quahog. If it slips through, send it back. It's not legal size, but if it fits, that is a legal size quahog that you can take home and you can share with your friends and family. Now, what's also really important is while you're quahogging, you're going to be in the water, you're going to be in the muddy bottom. You want to make sure that you have proper shoes or proper footwear. So a lot of times, and what you see in these pictures, is people can be wearing waders. You can also use boots. You can use water shoes. You can even wear an old pair of sneakers. But make sure you're wearing shoes. When you're out there on the water, you're going to be walking on rocks. You're going to be shellfishing, so there's going to be shells that can really hurt and cut your feet. So make sure you're wearing the proper footwear. Also, while you're out there, make sure that you have plenty of sun protection and you have plenty of water. Because quahogging is hard work. So hopefully while you're out there, you're catching a lot of quahogs with your quahogging rig. But if you're just going out for the day, or you're not sure if this is something you love and you really want to do, you don't have to go out and purchase a quahogging rig. You can use a trowel that you use at home, or more importantly, you can use your feet. Once you get into that muddy bottom, you can just move your feet around in the sand and feel and see if you can find any quahogs. And once you feel one, you can reach down and you can grab it and pull it back up. So you don't need any fancy tools to go out quahogging. You can just go out and experience what Narragansett Bay is growing for you. But hopefully while you're out there, not only will you get a taste of the bay, you also get an idea of what it's like to be a commercial fisherman. Because like commercial shell fishermen that are out on the bay every day, they're not using any mechanical equipment. They're using the same things that you guys are doing. When they're out on their boats, they're using, sometimes it's larger rakes. So you can just see, this is going to be what a commercial fisherman might be using. It's a little bit larger of a rake, but still, the tines are not too long. They're probably about 1 inch long. You can also tell that the tines aren't, they're only about 1 inch apart, making sure that they're really only collecting those legal size quahogs. So they have this giant rake. Of course, sometimes they're on a boat. So what they'll need is a really long pole that can be up to 50 feet long, or a really long stale that they'll use. And there's no mechanical equipment. Once they have their rake and their really long pole, they'll throw it over the boat, and they're doing exactly what you're doing. They're using their arms, their muscles to rake the bottom of the bay. And then once they've collected a whole rake full of quahogs, they have to pull them back up. And of course, they have to measure them as well. They want to make sure they're only getting legal sized quahogs. So just like you guys, they're going to measure them. But usually sometimes what they'll do is they'll dump them in something like this, an undersized rack, which again, it has these 1 inch bars that are making sure that if the quahog is below legal size, it slips through and then you send it back into the bay. Usually a commercial fisherman will remember exactly where they threw back those undersized quahogs so they can come back in a few years. Ms. Jeff, do you have a question?
Captain Chris wants to know if there's any other shellfish you might find, and if you should keep them or should leave them.
Absolutely. So I'm talking about quahogging today, but in Rhode Island, you can go shellfishing for all the shellfish that we talked about. You can go shellfishing for oysters and scallops. Those guys have a different season, so you want to go to DEM's website to check out that season. You can also go quahogging, or you can go shellfishing for our mussels, and a lot of people go shellfishing for whelks as well. Here in Rhode Island, there's 11 shellfish that are commercially fished in Rhode Island. And again, all the shellfish that we collect here in Rhode Island are sold in every single state in the United States, which is really cool. Great question, Mr. Chris. But once you guys have done this, and remember, you are a recreational shellfisherman, you cannot sell your shellfish. This is just for you to bring home to your friends and family to enjoy. But once you've collected your amount of shellfish that you're going to take home with you, make sure you're practicing safe consumption. So you want to make sure as soon as you pull these shellfish out of the water that they're staying shaded and they're staying nice and cool. When you collect your shellfish, you don't want to put them in any ice water. You don't want to freeze them. So the best place to put them is to get a clean cooler, put some ice packs in there, and you can store your shellfish in there. And once they get home, you want to put them in your refrigerator at 45 degrees or lower. Especially because we are taking these out of the bay and we're consuming them, we want to make sure we're practicing safe consumption. So a lot of people in Rhode Island like to eat their shellfish raw. But if you're someone like me that likes to eat them cooked, what you want to do when you're ready to cook them is make sure you're only cooking live shellfish. So if you see a shellfish that's totally open, that's probably dead. You want to get rid of that. You don't want to eat that shellfish. If you're not sure and your shellfish is a little bit open, the best thing to do is try to pick it up or try and tap on it. What your shellfish should do, or your quahog should do, it should clam up. That's its name. It should shut its shell and keep you out. If it does that, then you know that's a live shellfish and it's good for consumption. But when in doubt, you can always do the sniff test. And if you don't trust it, throw out those shellfish. They're not healthy. So make sure that you are always practicing safe consumption. But if you have all your shellfish, you brought them home and you've stored them properly. And remember, the best time to eat them is about 24 hours after you catch them, or up to a week if you're storing them properly in a refrigerator that's 45 degrees or below. But if you're ready to eat them and you want to cook them, my favorite recipe is you get your quahogs, you get a pan, you put a little bit of olive oil. It doesn't have to be a lot, just has to make sure that the pan doesn't burn. Put a bunch of garlic, put a bunch of parsley, squeeze some lemon, throw your quahogs in there, and let them steam. As they steam up, they should pop open. You don't have, if some of your quahogs don't open, make sure you get rid of those. Those aren't healthy. So make sure they open on their own while you're steaming them, and you really don't need anything other than olive oil. Make sure it doesn't burn. Once those quahogs open up, they'll give you enough juice to make sure that your meal is delicious. And once all your quahogs are open, what I like to do, add some linguine, add some more parsley, garlic, and a lemon, and you're good to go. That is my favorite recipe to share, but you guys look for more, feel free to share more, and you guys now have the tools to get out there and go quahogging yourself. So I hope you go out there, explore Narragansett Bay, bring home a taste of the bay to share with your friends and family, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This is my last breakfast by the bay. I had a lot of fun with you guys. A big shout out to all my friends and my fans that have been with me learning about Narragansett Bay this whole time. We have one more breakfast by the bay with you guys. This Friday is our big finale. We're going to go out on our boat. We're going to go trawling with a net just like this one above me. You guys are going to go trawling, and you guys are going to see what you can catch that's living in our bay right now, which is super exciting. Now, I had so much fun with you guys with Breakfast by the Bay, and I want you guys to go to our website this weekend and check out what we're doing this summer. We still have so many opportunities for you guys and for friends and families to keep exploring Narragansett Bay with us this summer, and I can't wait to see you guys then. See you guys soon. Bye!